WrestleMania 8 was going to be the end of Hulkamania for the foreseeable future. Embroiled vein deep in a huge steroid scandal, WWF's 8-year headliner was laid to waste by one scandalous blow after another. Despite all of the tabloid fodder, WrestleMania 8 actually did an admirable job of filling Indianapolis's Hoosier Dome, and the show was an eventful one with some great matches, a handful of memorable moments. Darker days were ahead, but for one night, WWF delivered with its marquee spectacular. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and here are 10 fascinating facts about WrestleMania 8. Number 10, about 1/4 of the crowd got in for free. Although not quite the ticket sales calamity that WrestleMania 7 was, WrestleMania 8 had its own issues filling the Hoosier Dome in Indianapolis to capacity. The given attendance for the event was 62,167, a healthy chunk of wheezing marks. The truth is, about 15,000 of those were freebies, given out in a concerted attempt to make the building look as full as possible on television. You can understand the cosmetic need to create the illusion of a sellout, and despite nearly 1/4 of the tickets being free, selling roughly 47,000 seats in a tumultuous time, it's still pretty damn impressive. Number 9, Marty Jannetty was unable to appear because of an arrest. Oh, the Rockers, where each member would say, "You think you've got personal problems? I'll show you personal problems." WrestleMania 8 would have been the logical place for Marty Jannetty to try and get a measure of revenge after Shawn Michaels, a tag team partner that famously flung him through the barbershop window. That was the apparent plan before real life intervened. Weeks after Michaels' heel turn aired in syndication, Jannetty was arrested in Tampa following a physical altercation with a police officer and being in possession of less than 1 gram of cocaine. Upon arrest, Jannetty was suspended indefinitely by WWF, and he served 6 months of a house arrest while Michaels fought dependable Tino Santana instead. Jannetty's feud with Michaels would resume in October 1992 upon his return to the company. Number 8, LOD'S appearance was their return from Hawk's suspension. When the Legion of Doom made an appearance at WrestleMania 8, flanked by old manager Paul Ellering, Animal and Hawk hadn't been seen for a couple of months. The duo had been invisible since dropping the tag team belts to Ted DiBiase and Erwin R. Shyster at an untelevised event in Denver the first week of February. It turns out that Hawk had failed a drug test, which was discovered days after the 1992 Royal Rumble. After the title switch, Hawk was sent home, and Animal worked a few more house shows before heading home as well. Unfortunately for LOD, their return with Ellering would lead to the infamous debut of Rocco, the honest-to-God actual puppet that WWF made them take around with them everywhere they went. They took the Road Warriors, the hottest tag team maybe in wrestling history, and made them carry around a puppet that looked like Eric Bischoff. Awful. Number 7, Jake Roberts held up Vince McMahon for his release just before his match. You may have noticed that after becoming the second victim of The Undertaker's streak, Jake the Snake vanished from Vince's home of Tantric Gigantics. Roberts had been wanting to work behind the scenes for some time and made a play for Pat Patterson's job after Patterson's sudden resignation over a sex scandal. Vince McMahon turned Roberts' request down, knowing that Patterson would be back sooner rather than later. Roberts then asked for his release, which McMahon also denied. Moments before going out to wrestle Undertaker, Roberts, who had been opening up talks with WCW, went to McMahon and once more demanded his release, or else he would walk out without working the match. With a metaphorical gun to his head, McMahon complied with Roberts' request, and he slithered down to WCW shortly after. Number 6, Bret Hart had a confrontation with Shane McMahon the night before. Turns out Vince wasn't the first McMahon the Hitman put his hands on. Per Hart's autobiography, he and his first wife Julia were at an Indianapolis bar the night before Mania, where a young Shane O'Mac happened to be. Hart went to introduce Shane to his wife, and there was a bit of awkwardness. Turns out that moments earlier, unbeknownst to Hart, Shane had put his hands on Julie, not realizing that she was Hart's wife. Hart was initially inclined to let it go, but after watching Shane stare him down with puzzled defiance from across the bar, Hart went over and threw him against the wall. Hart claimed he never would have actually hurt Shane, but made sure to tell him he would have done if he ever touched his wife again. Number 5, Bret Hart and Roddy Piper planned their match in a diner. Piper and Hart's match for the Intercontinental belt at WrestleMania 8 remains a classic all these years later. The story of two babyfaces who occasionally resorted to competitive ugliness to try and outdo each other resonated with the fans, and it marked Hart's biggest victory to that point, and it was only the 3rd time ever that Piper had allowed himself to be pinned clean in his WWF career. The 3rd time. The other two were to Snooker and Flair, just for completionists out there. Both men have reported sitting down at an out-of-the-way diner in Moncton, New Brunswick in late March 1992, where they went over the plan for the contest. Hart recalls that Piper spoke at length about the complexity and composition that he felt the match needed, and the Hitman was relieved that he had the exact same ideas that Piper did. The two old pros were on the same page before even sharing a thought. Number 4, Hart and Piper passed off Hart's blade job as an accident. Blading was forbidden in the sanitized, kid-friendly WWF, not unlike today, so if someone spilled blood during a match, it had damn well better be the accidental kind. Hart and Piper had made the decision, probably in the diner, for Hart to cut himself open during the match in order to heighten the drama. However, they had to make sure it looked like the result of an unpulled punch. In the moment, Piper caught Hart with a sort of uppercut sucker punch thing, allowing the Hitman to cover his face, spitting a blade into his fingers. Hart sliced a nick just above his right eyebrow and got the desired color. Once backstage, Hart and Piper put on a show of concern and apologies of the apparent hard punch, and had everyone, McMahon included, totally fooled, the little rascals. Number 3, Ric Flair was heavily fined for blading. The key to Hart's blade job is that it was discreet. Ric Flair's gusher was far from it. Ric Flair enjoys a blade job. His turn-ons include long walks in the park, picnics on the beach, and dropping to the floor to scratch his forehead open with a razor blade. For their WWF Championship match, Flair and Savage had also secretly decided to add blood to proceedings. The big moment came with Flair out on the floor and Savage perched on the top rope. Savage flew off with his patented double axe handle, sending Flair headfirst into the security railing. There it becomes blatantly obvious what Flair is doing when he pulls one hand towards his forehead. Before long, the Nature Boy looked like Carry On prom night, and an irate McMahon fined Flair several $1,000s for the infraction. Some accounts of the story go so far as to claim that Flair was nearly fired. Number 2, Sid Justice kicked out the atomic leg drop because Papa Shango was late. A common fact, but one worth remembering considering it's mental it's in the main event. Hogan's farewell match, for about a year anyway, wasn't intended to end with a clean finish. Hogan would drop the leg on Sid, and a new-to-the-fold Papa Shango would hit the ring to break up the pin. If nothing else, it would have protected the leg drop should Hogan return down the line. It's not clear who was at fault for the miscue, but the interfering Shango ended up running in late, thus Sid had to kick out of the move on his own. Improvising, Sid's manager Harvey Whippleman ran in for the hasty DQ finish, and Shango made it down the aisle to take part in the post-match assault. It was a giant botch, but thankfully all of it was forgotten in the wake of Ultimate Warrior's shocking return, naturally. And number 1, Hogan, Piper, Roberts, and Sid were all gone within a month of the event. Hogan's farewell was a given, it was part of the publicity of the event, and I've just told you about Roberts' escape from the company, but 1992 saw a giant exodus from the WWF, forcing the company to hotshot a new generation of stars. Piper wouldn't wrestle again for 2 years, only taking part in a few unaired Piper's Pit segments at upcoming TV tapings and making a brief appearance at SummerSlam. Sid quit the company 3 weeks after WrestleMania out of anger due to a failed drug test. Honestly, looking at the card for WrestleMania 8, that's half the participants in the 4 biggest matches already gone. Between Manias 8 and 9, Hawk quit after SummerSlam, and Animal followed weeks later. Savage would become a part-timer after dropping the belt in September. As for other major stars, Warrior and British Bulldog were fired in November for receiving growth hormone, and Flair would leave the company after a European tour in February 1993, retreating to the southern comfort of WCW. The roster that rode into WrestleMania 9 was a completely different one, and oh boy, WrestleMania 9. And that's our list. Did we miss any out? Tell us about it in the comments. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can follow me on Twitter here. I'm Adam from WhatCulture.com, and I'll see you soon.
Monday, March 6th, live from Newcastle, and free on YouTube. Liam Slater challenges the American Nightmare Cody Rhodes for the WCPW Internet Championship. In association with Revolution Pro Wrestling, the villain Marty Scurll takes on David Starr. The Mexican sensation El Ligero and Gabriel Kidd versus the Kiwi buzzsaw Travis Banks and the Iron Man Joe Coffey. Delirious versus Silas Young in a Ring of Honor showcase match. Former general manager Martin Kirby versus the Oddity BT Gunn. Match 6 in the best of 7 series, Rampage Primate in a chain match. And Drew Galloway will defend his WCPW championship against the aerial assassin Will Ospreay. WCPW proudly presents Exit Wounds.